Master in music, master in music. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you are all doing well and taking care of yourself in these times. I'm keeping up my grand need of teaching the cello on my YouTube channel, Petronella Torin. So if you want to learn how to play cello, that's a great way to get some inspiration and practice actually. I call it Practice with Petronella. And I'm also looking and planning into the next season of Mastering Music. So if you have some guests that you would like me to interview, you can write me a message and I will try to do my best, because I have so much people that I want to interview, but I'm also really interested in who you want to listen to. So your opinion really matters for me. So go in on my Instagram or my Facebook, Swedish cellist Petronella Torin, write to me. If you don't have social media, you can also just go on my website, you know it, masteringmusic.com. On that web page you will also find a lot of extra material like YouTube videos and links to the artist and a little bit more information about the artist. So maybe you want to check them out more and further, then you can always go there and have a look. It's a nice way to get some easy access to the artist and also to me, of course. So for today's episode I have a very special guest, the man that taught me all the best things I know about cello playing. Professor and solo cellist Niels Ullner. He's a Danish music animal that just spread music in every step of his life. He has been working as a principal cellist since his 20s at the Malmö Symphony orchestra in Sweden. He's a cello professor and chamber music director at the Danish National Conservatory in Odense in Denmark. Just like the famous tale of the writer H.C. Andersen tells the story about the ugly duckling, Niels has the gift of seeing the inner swan in every person that he meets. As a cello teacher, he can get to know your hidden soul just by listening to you playing. As he slowly peels off the layers of the duckling feathers, he awakes a beautiful swan in all of his students. I have always admired Niels' ability to see other people, and it's a gift that I really wish that I can take over one day. In this episode, you will get to go behind the scenes in the professional orchestra and learn about the unwritten orchestra rules and the do's and don'ts. We walked down memory lane and talk about some of our time's greatest cellists and Niels' old teachers. Is some of the cellists like Rostropovich, like Fournier, like William Peace, and some secret living locations of our most famous composers. I am so proud and grateful to have had the opportunity to learn from Niels, and I like to give my strongest, sincere recommendation to you who is listening to this episode and want to become an orchestra cellist. Niels Ullner is the most incredible teacher, with more than 1,000 insights on how to winning the jobs, how to do competitions, how to finding joy in professional cello playing. He has taught cellists like Jonathan Svensson, Mette Spang Hansen, Mikolaj Balasky from Cello Brothers, and many, many more. So now let's listen to Tchaikovsky's Peso Capriccioso with Malmö Symphony Orchestra and Niels Ullner. Welcome to Master in Music, Professor Niels Ullner, or solo cellist Niels Ullner, because you have two titles, at least.
Yes, thank you, Petronella.
We are sitting in your house here in Copenhagen, in Denmark. Actually, it's the first time we are in Denmark with the podcast, because we have been interviewing a Danish person before, Morten Rylund. He sends his love to you, by the way.
Thank you.
And then, but first time we are actually in Denmark and in Copenhagen with actually Danish person. But you are working in Sweden in a great orchestra called Malmö Symphony Orchestra.
That's true.
For 30 years.
For
34 years even.
actually.
Yeah, 34 years.
Yes.
I was on the celebration of the 30th birthday, or like celebration. You had a little garden party when you have been in the orchestra for 30 years. How do you still have the fire to work for 30 years in the same place? What's the secret?
Well, I think it's the same with living together with another person for
It's
a
marriage.
lifetime,
Yeah.
a marriage. It's not the same person. If you are lucky, it's a person who can develop, and we are all persons who are changing during our lives. And I think my relationship to the orchestra has been really different from the start to where I am now. It was I left the Danish radio orchestra from a tutti place, and I was then left some privileges by having fantastic, famous conductors and knowing the best, experiencing the best soloists and conductors in the world, maybe. And that was maybe not the case in Malmö, but then I had another responsibility because I was a principal cellist there. And gradually this orchestra has been developing into a first-class orchestra, I must say. And it has been rewarded the last few years with a new concert hall in Malmö Live in Malmö, which is to be counted amongst the best halls in Europe, I think.
Yeah, it's super incredible. I was there and it was so fancy. I was even in, like, they have a sky bar event. Like, okay, I started with the sky bar because I was hungry. And then I went down to the lobby and everything is super fancy. And it's just quality and pretty design. Like, even when you walk on the street outside, the trees fit into the landscape, which is incredible. And I was actually like looking at the trees and like, oh my God, even they are like perfectly fitting into the area. But how is it to play inside? Because I didn't do that.
I mean, it is a warm and clear acoustic. I mean, normally the two different characters are the warmth, the sound, and the clarity. They are often like enemies. It's seldom that they can really blend. If you compare to halls in famous halls in Europe, like the conservatory, it is a very enormous acoustic, and it's so wonderful to listen to, but it's really difficult to play in because you can hardly hear what's going on. This is one edge of the spectre. Another one could be the Elbphilharmonie in Hamburg, which is also fantastic, but it's so clear that it's almost annoying. It's almost scaring, and I think it must be like playing a Stradivarius violin if you're normally not used to it. It's like walking on a line. But so our hall is something in between, and it's wonderful because it's still clear and it's still also warm. It has a very, so to speak, human sound. I must
You're
say.
happy with the designers and the
Yes,
architecture.
We are.
And you also have like a relative new chief conductor, an American.
Yes, that's true.
And how do you like him? Tell us about him, because we are curious.
Well,
is it Robert Trevino?
Yes, Robert Trevino. Yes, he's American. He is a very young conductor, so to speak. To compare with.
When you're a young conductor, you're like over 40.
He's not. No, he's not even 40. He's in his 30s.
Yeah, 30. Wow,
so
that's
I
really
think
young.
he's really young. I mean, I played with.
He wasn't even born when you started playing in the orchestra.
No, that's true. I even played with Leopold Stokowski. He was 92 and I was 16.
Oh wow!
He was old, I think. But normally, I would say that conductors in the class that you would prefer them to be by age to achieve the experience to be a chief conductor would be normally past the 50-year age. But in this case, I think Robert Trevino is extremely gifted and extremely efficient. He can do anything. Of course, the American style is maybe a little far from the Scandinavian, so we have to get used to each other. But we're working on that. But he's very friendly and he's very open and very. I think it's inspiring to work with a gifted person like he is.
Is it important when you have a conductor that he's friendly and well behaved?
No, I mean friendliness can also be a cover for hiding your weaknesses. So no, I think we are musicians are so quick. We can in split seconds we know what it's all about when we have a new conductor. And sometimes even if they are mean, you can forgive them everything if they are great musicians.
Okay. So what is the benefits of having a young conductor then compared to an older one?
For me, it's different to say, but I think maybe I'm getting so old so that I can only speak of a small part of the orchestra.
Yeah. Of course, from
So,
your point of view.
but from our point of view, it's nice to see that the music is given on to new generations, and we are. Well, it sounds maybe very sentimental, but I think you should be grateful to be part of the game still when you are 60. I'm almost 64, the famous age. So I'm happy to be part of the game still.
Yeah, I saw an interview that you did. I read the article before this interview because I was doing some research. And there was a research where some journalist made an article about you when you were gonna play Don Quixote.
Quixote, yeah.
Don Quixote. Yeah, and it was funny because the article was mostly you talking about how much you like your colleagues, especially the one who was gonna make the viola solo, and he also talked about the conductor. But it was, I think that describes you very well because you are always, even if people ask you questions about yourself, you start complimenting your colleagues. Which was funny.
Thank you. I take that as a
but
good,
also
a
when
good
I
thing.
complimented the orchestra, you were like, yeah, you know, the other guy who is the soloist, the Finnish, your Finnish colleague who is the second principal soloist. He always compliments him next when I say the orchestra sounds good. So you don't take the credit all the time. So humble, is it very Danish humbleness over you, Niels?
Thank you. I don't know if it's Danish. I don't think so. If
Swedish,
it is anything, it is
lady
maybe life having taught myself how hard the business is, and we should really appreciate when people make a good career, or they make a good, they make a good work with the music, so to speak. It actually is more important than a career.
But maybe it's also part of the orchestra that you are so dependent by your colleagues.
Oh, yes.
So you cannot play good if you don't have good colleagues next to you, and the same wise they cannot play good if you are not helping them, because it's a collaboration between each other.
Yeah, it's really true. It's like a big family, and in some families there are taboos that you cannot speak about, and then you find a way of living without taking out the problems in the open. Yeah. And of course, it's the same in an orchestra. There is a special degree of openness, the feeling of being friends, but of course there is also a limit to this, and I think it's a matter of culture to find this balance. And I think in our orchestra it's a very fine culture. In some orchestras they can be really mean to each other, and well, I don't know what the purpose is for that. Of course, sometimes it's well, there's actually nothing between love to the work or fear. These are the two biggest forces, and I think the love is much more interesting.
And also, like in my experience, people also play better when they are happy than when they are miserable.
Yes.
But it's only my what I try to do with my students. Like I also notice when they feel comfortable, they play much better than when they are scared, and when they are angry, they really play very tense. And it's no point continuing almost.
You're true. That's right. You're right. I think it's important then that we can remember the dark feelings, the bad things in our lives also, because we should not only express when we are happy, but you have to be relaxed to be able also to show the bad, the sarcastic, angles in life and things like this, like in Shostakovich's music, for instance. I mean, it doesn't work if you are depressed, like he might have been a lot of his time, his life. You don't have to be depressed to play Shostakovich, but you have to feel enormously inspired to do it, even if you know that he was struggling. I mean, to be the artist or to be the messenger is not the same as being the message.
Yeah. That's a really good advice, actually. So what I mean, you were talking about the taboos in the orchestra, and I got really curious. So what is a taboo in the orchestra? What can you do? What can't you do in the orchestra? Like, be late, for example, maybe? Cannot be late.
But that's not a taboo.
Mobile phone ringing.
No,
it happened when I
of
played
course.
in some professional orchestras. The telephone was ringing, and I was like, there was the contrabass players, and I was like, okay, he's gonna die now. The conductor's gonna kill him, but nothing happened. So it's very different from orchestra to orchestra. I found out.
Well, this is an interesting point, but I mean, discipline in any orchestra is can find its own level. I mean, sometimes the management has to remind the musicians of not having their phones on stage and things like that. But I mean, normally it should not be a problem. I mean, and I remember once when we had the Russian chief conductor Vasily Sinaisky. He was our chief for like 8 years, I think, in the beginning of this from 2000, I think, like that. And he was so fixed on this problem that there were some people once or twice a phone had interrupted the work, and he was really mad about this. And so once our orchestral manager had to come on stage and make a long speech that now nobody should forget it. And the first thing that happened after was that my phone rang in the pocket, and nobody said anything. And I thought, now I'm dying, but nothing happened. There was no comment. And that is, of course, because they knew that I didn't do this on purpose, or I was always quite, careful with my work. And I think I would have been the wrong one to give a swada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very shameful. You're like, oh no.
But still, I remember the feeling, and it wasn't very good.
No. You're like, oops. So how is it working in an orchestra? Like, because I know that the orchestras are very different and they have different working conditions through the world. But how is it working in Sweden, in Malmö? For example, like, how does a work day look like in the orchestra? How long do you play?
Well, normally we actually had periods of long working days, like from 10 to 4, and that was too much. It really doesn't work if you have to have a long break, like 1 hour lunch break, in order to be able to cope with 2 more hours. It's really not efficient. So the orchestra for many years had a rehearsal Monday to Wednesday, 10 to 2:30, and even in our time with our chief conductor Marc Soustreau, French, who now left the orchestra, he thought that we should be even more efficient. So he cut down half an hour so that we actually worked 10 to 2, except for Tuesday, which was also with a sectional rehearsal, so that we had to do like the old system, 10 to 2:30 on Tuesdays, and then it was a dress rehearsal, always 3 hours Thursday, and a concert in the evening. Sometimes we even have an extra concert, a reprise concert on Fridays, but mostly there is a new production on Saturdays. So the orchestra makes often 2 productions every week, and with totally different kinds of repertoire. And so you have to be quite prepared to do, like this year is Beethoven, and really high classical standard, and then you should also be able to light classical or even jazz concerts or even rock concerts and things like this, which makes the whole job, the whole life of an orchestral musician much more interesting. But it can be too much sometimes, because we are always
changing between a lot of genres, and
we have to actually find a way to please our audiences, our different audiences. We must be more or less experts in different fields, which is difficult, because if you want to be really good in Brahms and Beethoven, you have to spend all your time on it. I think you could ask the Berlin Philharmonic about that.
But it's very funny, because like you ask a marketing, like a person who works with marketing, they say that you should always narrow down the target group. But in classical music is kind of, I mean, what you see more and more now in the concert halls is that they are trying to open it up, but they open up in the genres of the music instead of opening up in the personal approach to the audience. Because I don't know, when I try to sell concerts, I try to do it with a personal approach. So they are buying Petronella by playing something. They are not buying a cello concert. They are buying me playing a cello concert. But I mean, they're still learning, and there is orchestras that I see that I hardly even know that they are playing concerts, but apparently they are, because they are so bad at marketing, so it doesn't really reach out to the audience. But if someone is listening to this who is a marketing for the symphony orchestra, there is something called Facebook and Instagram, and there's a lot of people using it. So maybe that's a good platform for reaching out for audience, especially younger audience.
Yes.
But you also do a lot of children concerts now in Malmö, I saw, to try to find the new generation of audience.
Yes, it's, I mean, always an issue, a very important issue, how to at least secure that the kids come to the hall during their school time. So I think it was the ambition for the people who were actually arranging the children's concerts that they should, every child in the outskirts of Malmö or the community of Malmö should at least 2 times during their school be in the concert hall. And this, I'm sure, is happening. I mean, when we do these weeks with school concerts, there are 10,000 people during a week in the hall, and it's fantastic. I have a very fine contract, so I don't have to play everything that the orchestra does, and of course my knowledge is mostly the old classical concert programs, but I have been working in all the different styles, I must say, but my colleagues will maybe not think that it was very much school concerts I did, but I know what it is, and I think it's a fantastic feeling to see the hall filled up with children, and with also sometimes with their parents when it is, and their grandparents when it is the Nalle concert, when they have their teddy bear with them
on Saturdays, I think.
Yes, it's fantastic.
So what is your contract? You are solo cellist, so you are not every week there.
No, I work, for many years I worked half-time, now I work 60%.
Yeah. Do all solo cellists work that amount, or is it only you?
No, it is a matter of negotiation.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, there have been famous people who have worked even less. But I think an orchestra needs to have a face, and it needs to have, well, it can be misunderstood when I say it, but I mean, I think 50% must be the least that you can be in present.
Because you have to create a culture also between the cello section, I guess.
Yeah.
And keep.
You should be a team. You cannot be a team if you don't know each other.
How do you create a team as a solo cellist with the other cellists? Like,
I don't think you should not think like. Well, I'm used to thinking more like a team that we, of course, there's one who should play the solos, but what we do is actually the same, and we should not wait. If people wait for the solo player to be together, then they are waiting too long. Everybody should know when to play, so it's actually not so big difference between being number 1 or being number 3 or 5. It's of course the case that you have to jump between playing tutti and playing solo. That is really the big issue, and that's not so easy. But it gets a good trick for that. It gets easier with the years, because you actually get your experience that last time it went okay, so why shouldn't it be able? Why shouldn't it be possible this time too? I mean, it's a very simple psychology, but it is. I think it must be the reason why it's possible to be still a principal cellist like I am after 34 years.
Yeah. How do you change between tutti playing and solo playing? Like, do you have a trick, or is it just like? Yeah,
well, the trick is that you have to really join the group when you are finished with a solo, and you have to be interested to do so. You have to think that this is a challenge that you want to take because it's not easy. And I have seen colleagues who are not in my orchestra but in other orchestras. I'm sure it is most likely to happen that a very good solo player is playing too much solo and is actually not joining the group enough in between the solos, if you know what I mean. I will not go into this because it sounds like if I'm trying to pinpoint some persons, it's more a theoretical aspect.
I think it's also the same with chamber music and other things that you have to try to blend in, and that's difficult. I mean, also when people apply for the orchestra job, a lot of them are very great players, but when you choose someone, I guess you choose someone who can fit into the group. Or how does an audition work? Because you sit in the jury when you choose a new colleague. And what do you look for and what do you listen for?
We listen for everything. We want it's really a luxury to be able to choose between such fantastic players, young players that are applying the jobs now. I mean, every free seat is free open seat in the orchestra is announced on what we call musical chairs. Yeah. And so everybody in the whole world can, on the internet, they can see, well, now there's a job as a violinist in the Malmö Symphony Orchestra, and there will be maybe 100 applicants on the day. Yeah. For a tutti violin, it can happen like this. It's really fantastic, and it's but when we have to choose between them, we like to have one who is able to play with big self-confidence and soloist qualities, but we also want somebody who can listen to colleagues in a chamber music setting. So we often make for instance, a quartet trial. So part of the audition is a chamber music trial or chamber music situation, and then it's actually done so that you can from the jury, it can be commented, would you please do it again and try to think like this or that. I mean, it's a matter of flexibility, and if you have this possibility of playing like very big high standard on the soloistic part and also being able to do the chamber music convincingly, then you are maybe allowed to start the right and the real difficult part, which is the probation time. And here you are up against a lot of challenges, because you should be able to play the parts with not so much time. You must be well prepared. You must be flexible also here. You must be a good colleague. And there are many practical aspects also. I mean, if you are not... For young players, there are rules that they must know the hard way. You cannot write your fingerings in the parts, because it's maybe not the same fingerings that your... stand partner uses.
One of the taboos.
That's a taboo. Well, that's a rule that you must know. You cannot change the page, turn the page too late or too soon, or practical small. It sounds like small things, but it feels like the same as if you are a co-pilot in a cockpit. I mean, if you do things wrong, it can be fatal. It is the same feeling in the difficult passages. Of course, nobody will die, but we are feeling the same. We are feeling the same responsibility, I think. Mm-hmm.
Because I know you were my teacher, so I know that you've been teaching a lot of people and succeeding with getting a lot of your pupils into the orchestra. Mm-hmm. And even other instrumentalists come to you. They're double basses, violinists, everyone comes to you when they are going for audition. Mm-hmm. Because you are the master of auditioning. So give us your tips, because you're really good at getting people into the orchestra.
Well, that is a very, very overrated.
No, Niels, you know it's true.
No, but I mean, it's so difficult to put your students into the orchestras now. I'm just happy that it happened a few times.
We were opening the champagne because we were in the master class. And people call you and say, well, I won the job.
Yeah, that's true.
And sometimes you got two of them into the same orchestra at the same time.
Yeah, but I don't know. I cannot say how the recipe is because it's a matter of. I think if anything, you have to work by the example. I mean, you have to show yourself that you respect your colleagues in order to convey it to your students. I mean, it's nothing that you can say that you should do like this. I think the best way to teach things like this is with the attitude is to have the right one yourself.
I think also, okay, I'm gonna say what you do. So you like really have respect for the composer and the style. Like we really, like if we are playing Beethoven excerpts for the orchestra, you really like know the style and you really have like, you know the piece so well that you can tell us this is a difficult part, this needs a lot of attention. So you kind of teaches your students the culture of the piece because I think a lot of musicians that are very, very good and very successful, one of their secret recipes is that they can read the score very, very good and that they understand the composer. And that's also one of the really hard thing when you do an audition because you have so many different excerpts, maybe 10 of them or 15 even, and then you have to change between them.
Yep.
So that's kind of one thing that you teach all of the students very well. And we also I know that you are a professor in Odense because I studied there myself in the southern, what do you call the academy now? It was a Danish National Academy
it's
for a while.
It's the Danish National Academy,
yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Because you changed name when I moved.
Yeah.
But
I think it was not because of that.
It was not because of me.
But it was a sad moment.
But anyway, you have something called Stundkonkurrens, for example. So it's like a competition, like an audition for an orchestra, and you invite people from the orchestra. Even you take some people from the orchestra to judge the students so they can try out behind the screen. Even so, they go behind the screen, and then if they play well, they can do the second round. But normally, you also force them to do the second round because you want us to practice. And also with the concerts pieces, so everyone is playing the famous pieces that you have to play for an orchestra audition, because first round is always a concert. For cellist is Dvorak or Schumann or Haydn. Probably Haydn first, I guess.
Yes.
To select everyone who cannot play in tune. Yeah, tell me about that, because that's not every conservatorium who has that, and that's quite practical. And you started this Stundkonkurrens because you are also a cellist in the orchestra, so I guess you saw that people needed practice.
Yeah, I was happy to know an old professor emeritus, a former professor in Copenhagen, oboe player, Ole Henrik Dahl. He told me that this is a really important work that you should actually be observant to. And then he gave me his guidelines how they did it in Copenhagen, and I tried to develop our procedure from that. And actually today we have an orchestral academy, the Carl Nielsen Orchestral Academy in Odense, which gives students from the fourth year of the education the opportunity of applying, and then on their fifth year, that is the second master's year, they can actually work in the orchestra for 8 weeks to get the experience. And but they have to show their abilities during an audition, and before that, everybody in the school have the opportunity of joining the orchestral instrument students have the opportunity of joining our stunt auditions or mock-up auditions, as they call it in England, I think, or America. And it is successful, and it's connecting the studying life or the teaching life to real working life. So it's a good way to connect to the orchestra. For me, it's important to have the jury appointed by colleagues from the Odense Symphony Orchestra, and they are not only judging, they are giving feedback. So it's actually it's a teaching role. And I think that when we started out this in 2009, 10, I'm not sure, there was a little the orchestra was a little reluctant to this idea that their members should be having a teaching aspect also. They should just play, was the general reaction to my thoughts. But now I think everybody is more aware of the importance of saving this classical music. Our jewel has been really threatened over the last 10 years, so that we know, every musician knows more than before, that we have to fight for it. So I think that's actually a benefit for the students, that they can get some good feedback from the juries like this.
Yeah, I think it's super good, because it also you need to practice, and statistically it shows that you have to apply for 150 jobs. You have to do 150 auditions before you win one. I did a statistic with people who won it after the first audition and people who won it after the 200 audition. So actually you have to do it a lot of times, and you more times you do it, you more likely are you to win it or to be good at doing auditions, because doing audition in itself is not like, it's not like playing in your practice room. It is a very different situation. And it's a weird situation, because you're playing behind the screen, so you don't have any audience that you can look into in your eyes. You're playing probably with a pianist that you never saw before or ever practiced with. So it is a weird situation to show your best skills in less than 3 minutes, because you don't have a lot of time to show the people sitting in the jury that you are the one that they want to have in the orchestra.
It is like democracy is maybe the least worst way of ruling a country. I mean, there are, and we cannot find a better way than auditioning like this. But of course, it's really not without problems. It's a big dilemma that we cannot just take people that we know will do the job well. We must, of course, give everybody a fair chance, but we cannot really know what if we were right or wrong before, I think, several years of work. So this is a dilemma.
Yeah. And in Sweden you have, like, if you get your contract after 1 or 2 years of trial, you have your contract, so they cannot really fire you unless you do something severe wrong. But there are some orchestras that work by project. So you only are hired for 1 or 2 years, and then if you don't do well, they will kick you out, which is extreme stress, of course, for the musicians. Yeah. But in Sweden we don't do that, because it doesn't work with our society and socialistic mentality. But I mean, I don't think
it's good.
Yeah, I don't think you should have that. I mean, that would be a nightmare. Imagine being able to get fired every day.
No.
Have a bad day and then you're out. Oh my God. No, I wouldn't like it. Well, you're a little bit of a legend. I remember when I first heard about you, I had just failed entering the conservatorium in Sweden, because you also do auditions there, and I failed severe. And then I heard about this man who never even went to the conservatorium and was sitting as a solo cellist in Malmö Symphony Orchestra. And I thought, that must be the most awesome cellist ever. And then I found you, and that's quite unique by you. You never studied at the conservatorium. You got your first job when you were 18 or 19, I think, in the Danish National Orchestra.
20. But
20, okay. 20. So tell us about that, because you're not from a musical family. Your father was making bridges.
That's true.
Yeah.
My father is an engineer. He's still alive. He's 94 years old.
Yeah.
He's not making bridges anymore, but he's still an engineer.
Yeah.
But both my parents were very musical, and they decided that me and my sister and I, we should play the piano from when we started going to school. So from my 7th year, I played the piano, and my sister didn't really like the piano playing so much as I did. So then, when she was 10 years old, she was allowed to switch into violin instead of piano. And also there was in this music school a very strange instrument to me called the cello. And well, my mother said, "Why don't you try that?" I said, "Wow, come on, no." But she convinced me to go to a sort of a trial lesson. And the first just the first sound when my teacher, the lady who became my teacher, when she tuned the cello, the A string, I remember my feet were kicked away. It was fantastic. And then I played many hours the first 3 years with her, maybe 3 hours a day or something, and I thought it was a wonderful thing. And then I had to find out what I should do, and I had another teacher who was the principal cellist in the Danish radio, in the radio orchestra, Gerhard Hamann, a German, and I was slowly just getting infiltrated in this business. I could not really live without music, without classical music, and I was quite ambitious also, and I worked a lot, and then my third teacher, he said to me when I was 19 and just finished school, graduated from the
high school,
yeah. Yes. Then he said, well, you don't have to go to the conservatory, to the academy, because I can teach you here in Copenhagen. He was the professor in Aarhus, and I had a lot to do in Denmark, in my hometown in Denmark. It was Copenhagen, so I wanted to stay in Copenhagen, and he was not teaching in Copenhagen, so he said, I will teach you privately, and it will be okay. You can play the piano. You know theory. You don't need that academy, he said. And of course, it was a very risky business to say so and to do that. I followed his advice and so, but I did. And I must say, I'm of course worried about or I don't know if I should be worried, but I was worried at a time that I had no network because I was alone. But it turned out to be no problem because I actually got into the radio orchestra at a very young age, and I had all my studying colleagues. They were then, that I didn't have, they were then replaced with a new professional colleagues. So I was all very early in business. And of course, it's difficult to give the best advice to the students, because I could actually choose my own schedule and do the work without having to stop and having to find time for theory or for other kinds of obligations. I could just play the cello for 6 hours or 7 hours if I liked, and it's really difficult for my students now because they have to attend so many other classes, and I respect the ones who actually get up early in the morning and make everything that do everything they should do, and I know it's possible, and somehow I don't think it was the best education I got, but I was lucky. I would have loved to have more challenges in theory and in music history and so, but I have been studying myself, and I still am. I think I'm an eternity student in some of these.
But don't you think that the music conservatorium has to change? Because I mean, a lot of the things that they are teaching now, you can actually learn yourself.
Yeah,
because music history is kind of, I mean, now they're gonna kill me, the history teachers, but you can actually read that book yourself. And there is more other urgent subject that is gonna be the difference between life and death if you get a job or not. Because it's not a music history, of course, if you don't play stylistic, but it's very rarely that your history teacher is telling you how to play in a stylist way. They just present the music for you, and a lot of that all the young people already know when they enter the conservatorium, for example. How do you think the education will change, and how would you like it to see it change?
I think the most important thing is that the kids must start earlier. We have been sleeping. We have had a sleeping beauty syndrome in Denmark. We thought that it is enough to choose what you want to do when you are 18 or 19. It's much too late if you want to be a string player of international standards, and your parents must put you in the position to be able to achieve, I mean, the best results already when they are starting school is the latest, I must say. Yeah. And
But I also feel that, I mean, also alongside my colleagues, a lot of people started quite early, but they learned everything wrong, and then they have to relearn everything.
Yeah.
So it's like, even, I mean, they can start early, but they have to start right, sort of.
That's true.
Because also I'm also from a small place where there was not a lot of cello teachers, so the violin teacher has to teach cello, and I mean there has its effects on the players. Clearly.
But I mean, still we must be happy that it happened.
Yeah.
Because the alternative would have been that there was no teachers at all. So we can just be happy that it's now a better standard, as a better what do you call it, knowledge about what is necessary and what works, what doesn't work. I think we are just getting wiser all the time. The Swedish society and the Danish. I mean, we are learning from maybe some of our Eastern European countries. We learn something about the tradition, and then we combine it with our own feelings for how do you raise your child, and how what you can expect from your child. So it's a mixture of our a little maybe too free style in Scandinavia, and the more old-fashioned authoritative way of learning everything from Russia. I mean, we can learn a lot instead of thinking that we can do everything better, which I think was the Danish problem for many years. We knew better than the world, and now we are actually much more influenced by fantastic teachers from Eastern Europe in the Danish string society, so to speak.
I think, I mean, things are very good in Europe as well, but some things are also really bad that we are so much better in. That's at least my experience, because every country has its own tops and downs, of course. But I also felt like, of course, you can also see that you have these wonderful musicians coming from there, but the amount of people going through the music education is 3 or 5 times bigger. So then you also are like, then it's also going to be more people who are in a higher level, because if you have more students there in the conservatoriums. But I think it's pretty amazing that you managed to go through and just win a job without going to the conservatorium, because today that's really, really, really rare that happens, and I think it's impressive, at least. But I know that you also studied for some great cellists, and I wanted to ask you about that. We have, for example, Pierre Fournier, I cannot say his name. Fournier in French. And we have William Peath, my favorite. I really like him. Rostropovich, you also met.
Yes.
And how is it with Starker also?
No, I haven't actually. No? I have heard him teach. Yes.
Okay, but you were not.
I have not played for
students.
Starker. No, unfortunately.
How was it with this great cello giants? Tell us about it.
Well, it was fantastic to have the opportunity of meeting, especially Mr. Fournier. He was a very noble aristocrat and a fantastic player, and he was. I thought that maybe he had not so much edge and so much temper in his teaching, but that was until I saw him getting really mad in a master class with a young virtuoso type and a boy who could play very quickly, fast Valentini sonata things, very virtuoso style up and down. And at a point, Fournier, he almost threw his bow to the floor. He said, "Stop, the greatest virtuosity is to sing. Go home and work on your singing qualities." And that was wonderful, because that was exactly what he could himself. He had a very beautiful sound, and he was, of course, also able to play the repertoire. I mean, he could also play the virtuoso things, but he was not interested in that so much. I remember my first lesson with him. I came to Geneva. He lived in Geneva, and so I had private lessons also with him. I continued my freestyling, and so I no, I pushed the doorbell maybe 10 minutes too early because I couldn't wait. And his Japanese housekeeper showed me into the study, and he was not there, and I was waiting. And then exactly at 3 o'clock, he came into the room and he said, "I'm sorry to keep you waiting," and so with a very, very polite attitude. So, and I was so disappointed because he came without the instrument, and I had been so much looking forward to hear him play in a close distance, being close to him, and so but 1 minute later, the Japanese housekeeper came with his cello, and she knew exactly how the end pin the end of that, and how it should be prepared. And she gave him the instrument, his Miramont cello, a wonderful French cello, and he sat there in his working chair, and there was no bow, so she came with a bow. And she knew exactly how much the tension should have, and it was nothing. I have seen violin bows being more tense than this. He didn't need this, he didn't play in that way like we do today. Then we started working, and I had maybe 1.5 years with him. I lived in Denmark, but I came every month for 2 lessons. And after 1 year, maybe he asked me if I wanted to stay for a glass of wine after the lesson. And I was almost fainting because I thought, well, I didn't think I played any good that day, but I was so proud and moved that he would ask me this. And then after the lesson, the housekeeper came again with a tray with 3 glasses on it, and we had one each, and he just wanted to tell me that they were married. I just want to announce, this is my wife. And that was so beautiful that he wanted no one to think that there was anything going on with the Japanese housekeeper. And now she is actually Madame Fournier, who is now one of the leading board members of the big competitions, and so that was interesting. That was the first meeting with her and being his wife. Yeah.
And William Pitt.
Yeah, but he was a very nice man. He was also very cultivated, and he had an old-fashioned, very British language. He was, of course, a Jewish boy coming to it. I'm not sure if he was actually born in UK. Maybe he was, but he had this wonderful Jewish way, and he told me that he was actually a student of Klengels in Leipzig, and at the same time when he came to Leipzig as a 15-year-old young boy, then Emanuel Feuermann was also there, and he was maybe, 10 years old or something like that. So Feuermann he had almost the same haircut that I have now, which is no hair, and he developed it very early, like I did. So he, in his 20s, he was almost bald, and he said to this young, he told me himself, Mr. Pleath, that he was addressed by Mr. Feuermann, and he said, I had a wonderful big hair this time, and Feuermann told me, for some of your hair, I will give you some of my 4th finger trill. And then I must admit, I answered him, thank you, no, but I have both.
Bam.
Den der stil tyckte jag var kul.
Super funny attitude, but it's always about the hair, no? Because I know that you love Misha Marsky a lot because of his hair. No. You've always been a bit jealous of him.
Have I? I was not.
Yeah, Hannah, your wife is always telling me how jealous you are. She says it's about the hair.
No, I don't think so.
Yes.
I like Feuermann. Yeah. I like Casals too.
Yeah. He's very funny as well.
No, but
And Rostropovich you also had.
yeah, well,
Another.
Rostropovich was in Denmark many times because he was a personal friend of the Queen's mother, Queen Ingrid. I don't know how that started, but he was always very keen on making friends with the royal families around Europe, I think. But maybe because as a provocation against the Soviet regime, I think maybe. But he was very often in Denmark, and it turned out that he was also in Denmark without people knowing it. So at a certain point in my work in the jury of the Danish string competition, we had the opportunity of connecting one of the princes, Prince Joachim, as a protector, as a formal protector of the competition. And after, at some point there was a reception and people were talking to him, and then at a certain point I went to him because I didn't want to line up in the queue there. I just waited for a more calm moment, and at a certain moment he was totally alone, and I thought maybe I have to go and talk to him now because he seems to be a little bored. And then I asked him what his opinion was about Slava, about Rostropovich, if he could remember him. If I can remember him, he said, he was my piano teacher. So it turned out that he often came to the castle and he was teaching the young princes to play the piano. Of course, this is maybe a little bit exaggerated, but it was a nice reaction, I think. Slava, he came also to Denmark he made a master class in Egeskov Castle in 1981, and I played for him the Shostakovich Sonata with Anne Öland, who is fortunately not alive anymore. And he was a fantastic teacher there, and he said things, and I have the scores from then when he with his remarks, because Anna, my pianist colleague, she was so consequent. She wrote everything he said in the music, so that's nice to have. And I remember playing the slow movement of the sonata. There's after this very depressed and very fantastic part of the second part of the slow movement is so almost dead. Then there's this tone coming up, G sharp, and going up in the register. And I thought that here we can actually put a little vibrato and make it more positive, more not so depressed. And then I asked him, and he said no vibrato. So I said, yeah, but I was so stupid. I asked him if there was not a little hope here.
Yeah.
No hope, yet no hope. He turned me totally down. But I'm still not really. I'm still not all convinced that this is right.
Now you do it as a provocation.
But he was fantastic, and he was a showman. When he then came back 10 years later, I met him in Malmö because he played the Dvorak concerto, and he claimed that he remembered us because I had a photograph when I play for him with Anyushka, like he used to call Anne Öland, Anyushka, and he actually put his finger on that photograph and he called her by that name. So it's not really, he had a big memory. And then it was after the concert there was a reception or a party in the town hall in Malmö, and at a certain point he shouted from a different hall, Nielsovsky, because I had a Russian colleague who actually told him my name, and she used to call me Nielsovsky. So he was calling from the hall beside us, "Your kings, come! You have to see your kings!" And then actually he was pointing to all the old Danish kings from before 1658 when we lost Sweden or lost Skåne.
When we took it back.
Yeah. You took back what you think was yours. Yes.
It was ours. It was ours.
Exactly.
Well, I think it's really lovely. I think I also have a lot of these kind of stories about you.
Mm.
But that would be a very long episode about the stories from Niels, war stories. We can tell one or two. I think there is one that I really like. I think it was the first lesson. I'm not sure, because I think the first lesson was at your home in Gentofte, when you lived there. It's a very famous place, Gentofte, because Rachmaninoff has been there, and also Grieg. And Niels likes to tell everyone this at all the concerts with the cello. We have to hear about Rachmaninoff, because he used to be the neighbor of Niels.
Oh, well.
Almost. He lived there during the war. Or how was it?
Rachmaninoff, he came to... Well, I had to make an introduction for
The concerts.
a concert somehow. Well, yes, not only the concerts in the academy, but it was at another occasion. And I looked it up, and I saw on Wikipedia that Rachmaninoff actually lived in Denmark for 8 months. And I didn't know that. And it even said which houses. And there were 2 houses very close to where I lived or where we lived in Gentofte. So he actually lived in a beautiful, yellow, fantastic house in Skovvej, number 5. And every time I passed, also now when I drive by this place, I always wave to Sergei. And my wife thinks I'm crazy. But I think it's a fantastic feeling that he was there. And it's also very embarrassing that the Danish Musical Society didn't make him a professor in the academy or things like that. But he had to leave. He got a better offer, of course, after 8 months. So he went to America, and the rest is history.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, anyway, the first time I was in your home in Gentofte for my first lesson, I found it because one thing that I really like with you is that you never take anything that has with the cello personally, like it's personal, but you don't, like, even if I played like crap, you never attacked me personally. You were always very kind. Which is not a lot of teachers is like that. I mean, you keep the cello, like if you play crap, it's because you play crap. It's not because you're a bad person. And I think that is really a success factor with you as a teacher, because you never make your students feel like a crappy persons, actually. Maybe we play like crap, but we are not always a crappy person. And also, like, even if we play very good, you don't treat us differently, because we are always human first, and then we play the cello. But it was funny, because the first time I had a lesson with you, you hugged me in the end of the lesson, and I got a shock, because in Sweden we don't hug people, because we have this kind of Scandinavian atmosphere with the arms lengths between each other. Yeah. But you always did that with your students, which was really charming. Maybe you still do it. And I think it was really like, you're a big cello daddy. Like, everyone refers to you as their father in cello playing, almost, if they had you as a teacher, which was really nice. And a lot of the times you took good care of us, and we always had the master classes in France in the beginning. And then you made so sure that we could pay for the master classes by doing a cello ensemble. So we played we did some gigs around in Denmark. So we earned some money before, and then we could pay for the master class and go to France and play with the cello class, which was really clever. So you're a really good entrepreneur, actually. But now you're doing master classes in Denmark, actually.
Yes.
It's called Østergaard or
Oremansgård.
Sorry, my pronunciation is crap. With your wife Hannah, and
Yes.
Also like, is she a mental trainer or it's like stage performer?
No,
Malene.
She's actually what we call a physiodramatic teacher. She teaches in the Opera Academy, which is more. She has.
Because your wife is an opera singer.
Yeah. But my wife is teaching in the Royal Academy of Music Singing, and Marlene is in the Opera Academy, which is part of the Royal Academy. But what Marlene is doing is she's helping Hannah with you could say the psychological parts of performing and things like this, and also physical, and also putting up a Mozart part of an opera. I mean, directing it and everything. It's a very good they have a very good teamwork. And another colleague is Jesper Sivebæk, who is a professor of guitar also in Copenhagen Academy of Music. And
but do they come to the masterclass?
yes.
Yes, also.
So we are now three different kinds
teachers.
Animals, music animals. There are singers, cellists, and guitar players. And we make chamber music together, even 2 and 2 or 3 and 3, and they have, of course, their own classes also with pianists and so. But we try to make it so that everybody are connected in some kind of chamber music.
And constellation.
Setting. Yes.
And do you know already now the dates for the next masterclass?
No, it is on the 24th of June. It's the day after Midsummer, and a week from that.
Yeah, in Denmark. So people can apply if they want to see a little bit of Denmark and experience some Danish music. Well, what did you call it? Working animals. It was really great fun. I've been to the ones that you did in France, which was super fun because we were driving down there with all the cellos, and because the singers they were flying down, and we were driving because we had the big instruments, so it didn't really make sense to fly. But it was really great. I think we had so much fun. But now you have a quite big class in Odense because you've been teaching there for 20 years this year or more? 20?
Oh, no, actually more, because I started...
But you've been a professor for 20 years?
No. Well, I have...
Tell us.
I started in 90.
90, okay.
Yeah, and I have had different kinds of...
positions.
Yeah. It doesn't matter so much. I mean, I'm doing the same work as I did always.
You're a chamber music coordination and cello teacher, cello professor, because you have your title. Professor is important. And you have how many? 11 or 10 students?
There are now 13 students in the school.
13.
I teach 10 of them. Yeah.
And from all corners of the world?
I think there are 7 nationalities in my class. Yeah.
Nice.
And there are some exchange students from France and Poland and from Austria, and so it's very international. And I have even people.
How many Swedes do you have?
One from Sweden. There's one from Finland. There are Danish, of course, and
because the Swedish people always come to you. There were always a little group of Swedish cellists in Niels' class, but it's quite natural because you're a principal cellist in Sweden.
Yeah.
So you're working quite a lot with all the students and then as well in the orchestra. So you're a very busy man. What do you do to be able to work that much? Because it's not for everyone to work that much, because it's pretty much more than 100% what you are doing. Because Niels is not this kind of teacher who look at the watch, because it's like he will leave you, he will let you go when you can play the things that you should play, and then you can go home. So you can sit there for 2 hours if that's necessary. And sometimes you even give like 3 lessons a week because we needed it. If there was something important coming up, you made sure we were prepared.
What I do?
Yeah, what do you do? How can you work so much?
I think it's the same as if you are going to run a marathon. If you plan to do it, you cannot stop every kilometer and say, well, how far do I have to run? I mean, you have to just go on.
Yeah.
So, and if you like what you do, it's not so difficult.
Niels will work until his wife calls him and yells at him, I think. But it's quite... I know that you like to winter bath, because Hanna is winter bathing, your wife. Because the singers in Copenhagen love to winter bath.
We have been swimming this morning in the Öresund, yes.
And but that's quite, like, I think that's quite good. I've been in the Netherlands. There is this guy called Hoffman who is doing a lot of cold exposure, and he says that it cleans your body from stress when you do this winter bathing, because the cold is stressing your body, and then it's kind of easing you up when you, because you go in the sauna first, right? No, you go first in the bath.
We go to the sea first.
Sea first and then sauna.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And I can tell you it's a very short swim, but we do it.
Yeah. But do you think it helps you relax, or?
Yeah, I mean, I have never gone there. I have never left the place, the søbadet, regretting anything. We have always been so happy to do it. Sometimes you have to force yourself to go there because it's so cold, but you'd never regret it.
Yeah. And do you exercise or eat any special diet or something secretly like this? Is this a rugbrød, the Danish
No.
bread?
I think no. I might. I'm not a vegetarian, or maybe I should. I don't know, but
would it help? You think?
I don't know. But I think we all cut down on the meat these years, and we even do that here a little bit. Maybe we should do more.
Yeah, have to grow some vegetables.
Yeah.
I know that your family. I mean, we know that Hannah is doing well in the academy. They don't want to let her go. You're singing wife, but you also have a daughter who is singing, Anne-Sophie.
Yes.
And then you have an actor daughter as well.
Yes, that's
who is quite. She's actual now with a documentary in Denmark. I saw.
Yes,
she was playing the Drottning Alexandria or
Alexandrine. Yes.
Drine, yeah. In the TV series. Yeah.
She was the queen, the mother of our now ruling queen's father. Yeah. So
are you doing like The Crown in England? Or are you doing a similar one but in Denmark?
Yeah, well, it can be compared to that. But this is different because this is a combination of the queen telling her family's story herself, and also being being shown with actors and actresses, so that everything is like being visualized what she is telling. Yeah. And my daughter had a very nice role there. Yeah.
And that's quite impressive, because it's not easy having two works, and a wife and two daughters, and getting everything to go together between family and music, and especially when your family is working in the same business as you, because you have the same working hours, I guess, or maybe not. When one is off, the other one is working. And how do you make something like that work?
I mean, if you don't have the same values, if you don't like opera, you cannot be married to my wife, for instance. Last night we were in the opera in the opera in Copenhagen. We are maybe we are musical nerds, but we enjoy 24/7. Our lives. Yeah.
Let's go home from the conservatorium to go to the opera.
Yeah, but I mean, somehow it's for Hannah, it's also part of her work. She doesn't think it's her work, but it is, because she's keeping track on all her former students and what they're doing and enjoying their careers, and so it's it's a natural part of her working life. It's the dessert, maybe you could say.
Yeah, that's true. So I have a few things more that I want to ask you about. I know that a lot of listeners likes to hear about your cello, because you have the Malmö Symphony orchestra cello, I think. And it's now it's the pronunciation. Francesco Ruggeri.
Yes.
Oh my God, my pronunciation is really crap. Yeah, 1667.
That's true.
Yeah. How is it to play on? What makes a good cello?
To play the old Italian instruments, of course, you get a rush. The knowledge that the instrument is built like 17 years before Bach was born. That is fantastic, or 18 years. Yeah. And of course it has a fantastic personality, a wonderful sound, but it is also difficult, because they are very moody to weather changes and to the moist of the humidity changes and things like this. And actually the old Italian instruments are not fantastic in an orchestra. They are more soloist instruments. So what I actually did now is I ordered a new instrument.
No? Because all the instrument that you had your own cello, one of the students.
Yes, that's true. But I actually ordered a new instrument by Peter Westerlund, and I have it here, and I'm buying it, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. Is it his own design, or?
It's a Montagnana copy that he has been doing this for many years, and that is the same with music as with luthier, with cello building, cello making, that you have to really do maybe the same model a few times before you know, and he has made, I think, 66 of these. So it's really
it's a good one.
It's no wonder that he's an expert.
Yeah. I remember because when I was studying, one of your students was borrowing your cello, and then he ended up buying it and took it from you. So you actually were without cello for a long time, and it was Henning.
Yeah, that's true.
Henning Fredriksson. He fell in love with your own cello.
Yes.
So
that's good that it was.
You're very
that it was not left alone in a cello case. I didn't really need it at this time, but now I'm thinking of my retirement.
Yeah.
Not that I hope it will happen right now, but I'm preparing for it.
Yeah, so you can still play.
So it's good to have a really good instrument.
Yeah, because you have to give back.
The Ruggieri is not mine, that is the orchestra's.
Then he has to go back or become someone else's.
Yes.
But he's kind of your best friend. A little bit, but maybe it's a destructive relationship when the weather is moody. So I want you to give, the last thing is that I want you to give an advice to someone who is in the music school and to someone who is in the conservatorium and someone who is freelancing or professional. So we start with the person in the music school. What advice would you give them for life as a musician or life with music?
Well, I think in this time when we are so much influenced by the internet and we have all the last model of the iPhone and things like fantastic machines that can actually fill your life with knowledge and with all sorts of challenges, but also it can steal your focus. I think it's fantastic to be able to cut that out or to shut it out of your parts of your awake life. So to play the violin or the cello or whatever is a fantastic opportunity to develop yourself and your own perception of what's going on, being not influenced by the internet. That would be very strong advice. Also to the parents that they give their kids the possibility of not being online all the time.
And being just here and now and disconnected with the cyber world for a little while. Actually, I read a book about the Swedish psychologist. He says that a mobile phone takes as much attention as if you would have a baby in the room, because it's like they did a lot of studies when people were making tests with the phone in the room or without the phone in the room, and the people who didn't have the phone in the room got better results than the people that actually had the phone in the room, even though it was closed down and wasn't on. It took focus. But then for a person in the conservatorium, some of your students maybe perhaps
you must be I mean, today it is so important to think out of the box, so to speak, so that you are not trying to follow the pattern of some older generations. I mean, even I had to think different, or we had to think differently than our parents, and it will always be like that. But it has never moved so quickly, so that our life and our children's life and our grandchildren's life, they will be really different, and I think that being in the business of music, in classical music, if you want to speak about this as a special area, then I think we have to be much more broader in our abilities. We cannot be only experts with Brahms and Beethoven anymore. We have to be much more addressing a bigger audience, because we will not be able to make a living. It's so difficult to get into an orchestra now. It's I mean, I cannot speak with my students very exactly about their possibilities. They must actually find out themselves what they want to do. The only thing I can do is to give my experiences to them, which is not going to cover all their needs. But of course, I hope that I can give them the tools to be able to play as well as possible, and to be from that go on and find a new pattern of expressions that can be used in other styles that we maybe not know, that we don't know yet.
I have something that I want to try out on you, because I have my own idea of what has to happen. So my idea is like that. The problem now is that everyone is seeking the same audience. Everyone is seeking the same job. So that's why a lot of musicians don't have any work, because everyone wants to sit in the same orchestras. They want to have the same jobs with the same attention from the same audience. But what I noticed that when I started to addressing people from different audience and building my own audience and playing the music that I'm really good at, I got more success, and it was also possible for me to work as a musician, because all of a sudden a whole world opened up for me. And instead of resisting going to do something or fighting for the same work as everyone else, I kind of decided that it was easier for me to get the other sorts of attention, because I don't think we have a lack of people in the world, because actually we are just extending with more and more people. So we should be able to live from music, but I think the problem is that everyone is seeking the same audience, and everyone wants to play in Cording Hall. Everyone wants to sit on Malmö live instead of addressing the audience that is not, because also they have different kind of qualities. You don't have to be a super virtuose cellist to play for an audience that requires easier music. So, for example, if I started playing for people in elderly home, for example, they don't hear very well. No, they have different requirements. For them, it's just fun that someone is coming, and it's different elderly homes, of course, because some elderly homes has very high educated classical listeners. So then they maybe require some more difficult classical music, but other elderly home has people who are just happy that something is happening, and they don't care if I play Swedish folk music or if I play Bach, because as long as I tell them a little story about it and have a nice cozy time with them, they will enjoy it. And that's kind of how you build up. You have to try what you are good at in music to be able to find your audience, because if you find your audience, you can survive and get money for what you are doing. But I don't know, what do you think about that? You think it's a reasonable thought?
I mean, you have proved that it's a reasonable thought. Because
I mean, it goes good at times. I have a lot of success, but I mean, when I first tried it out, I had like 19 concerts in 2 weeks. So then it was really, really good. But then my teacher said to me, you cannot expect always to have that kind of success. But I mean, it comes and it goes. But I think we as musicians are very bad at offering music also, because we expect them to find us.
We all know, I think most of us know the feeling that we go to a family gathering, some birthday or whatever it is, and sometime in your childhood, maybe this aunt or this uncle has asked you, can you play something for us? And we have been brought up to be so perfectionist that we will not play because we are not ready to play it yet. I know this, and I think all children know that, more or less. Or if they don't, I must really say bravo to their parents or their surroundings, because it would be wonderful to be able to keep this wonderful freedom that you can always play something to somebody and always make somebody happy with what you can do right now and here. I think that's maybe what you are saying.
Yeah, that's my idea.
Yeah. And I think it's a wonderful idea, but of course it's conflicting with the ambition to get better, to be perfect, or to achieve the highest level of I mean, no matter if it's music or sports or whatever it is. I mean, it will easily be like sports, that you cannot show something that is not on your top level, and you will not do the same with the violin and or the cello, and that's a pity. You're right. I mean, the children should be able to feel the joy of music, and then it would maybe even be able to you could be able to keep that in your approach as a grown-up person.
You will also kind of, because I am working more and more as a mental trainer for musicians, and I noticed that a lot of people have problems being on stage, doing auditions, playing good on exams. They play super bad on the exam all of a sudden. Yeah. And it's because they have maybe one exam concert or one big concert every half year. Yeah. But if you are starting with playing for people who have less demands or demands different things, like I always divide it into people who listen with their brain or listen with the heart. And people who listen with the heart, they don't care if you do a mistakes, because it's still music what you do. Even though it was another note maybe, or it was another bowing and stuff like that. But if you listen with your brain, you have another intellectual approach to the music. But if you always play like at least once a week, you will also practice the art of playing in front of people, and also practice yourself in how should I behave in order to get myself to play really good at a concert. Because you have to it is possible to actually teach your body to play perfect at a certain clock time. Like you can time yourself to do that. That's what sport people are doing. But we are in the music business are very far behind, because we are still doing like Beethoven, and we think that's the best way to do it still, even though we developed a lot and there's a lot of science and But I don't know, I hope there will be more of that. And I think also that's something that the conservatorium should focus on, to maybe open up music for more people instead of just practicing 6 months for one concert. And then never play it again.
I mean, something that we are not.
Because you do that with your cello class. We had a cellostory every month.
We still do.
Yeah, so wonderful cellostory. So if you're living close to Odense, you should go. They have a wonderful new conservatorium and beautiful buildings and everything. So you should go and listen to that, because they are free. And you invite people, and you have an audience who comes quite frequently, because you have you build up a trust between them, and then your students can practice to play in front of people, and the audience get free music. So you have a win-win situation.
It's a win-win situation. Yes, we are actually experiencing that there are more people coming in each time, and faces we don't know. So it's a wonderful development.
Yeah, and it's really important. Yeah, I want to thank you so much for being in the podcast. I could talk with you forever because you're one of my favorite persons in the world. And thank you for inviting us to your home. I know it's a great area here. You told me before we started that you have 3 other cellists living here in the same area in Copenhagen. You have Andreas Brantelid's father here. He's also a cellist. And then you have some colleagues, retired colleagues.
They're actually... I think we are 10.
Yeah,
if you
10.
count.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So there will be a new cello ensemble here soon, coming up with the Niels Ullner.
No. But it was so nice to speak with you, Petronella.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I know you have so much experience, and I really value that. And if you want to get in contact with Niels, or listen to his concert with his students, or go to his masterclass, you can visit. I mean, you are on the Malmö Symphony Orchestra webpage. Doesn't say so much about you there, but it's a really nice photo of you. Very, very handsome. Also in the conservatorium, they have some small words about you, but then you also have a Facebook page.
Yes.
Yeah, but you're not so big in social media, actually.
I'm too old school, and it's not because I don't want to, but I never find the time, because I have to do something more interesting.
You have too much things to do. So how can people contact you? Do you have an email on the conservatorium, or they should call the conservatorium?
But I think if they go to the sdmk.dk, it is the homepage of the academy in Odense. Yes.
So then they can find the cello soirees, and they can find you if they want to come study for you.
Yes.
They have to come soon because you're retiring.
Or no. Don't
in
say
10
that.
years. You will never retire, Niels.
Or use my own email address, which is Niels Niels .Ullner ULLNER at then gmail.com.
Then you can get in touch with Niels, and you can also go to concert hall in Malmö to listen to him, but make sure he's playing, because he's a busy man. And I think that was all. How was it for you? Was it difficult questions?
I hope I passed the test.
It will be difficult.
Thank you.
Thank you, Niels.
Master in music,